A good day to one and all. Myself Lahari and I'm from degree second year. In this session, I'll be dealing with Hyderabad integration. On 17th of September, whole Telangana state had celebrated Integration Day. So what is Integration Day? To understand this, let us head back 75 years. The massacre took place a year after the violence of partition. In what way then Hyderabad state, in the heart of India, it was one among 500 princely states that had enjoyed an autonomy under British colonial rule. Hyderabad state then comprised of parts of Maharashtra, Karnataka, and whole Telangana. It was covered with Bombay, Madras, and Central Province. It was bigger than what it is now, and there were 85% of Hindus and 15% of Muslims. Before getting into the topic, let us discuss about scope and relevance under UPSC. In prelims, we see it under GS1 Indian history, and in mains, we have it in GS1 paper itself, and it comes under Indian history and Indian national movement. Topics which I cover in this session. Background. In background, I'll quote about the Nizam and the ruling. Second topic is negotiation. I'll briefly explain all negotiations such as political and diplomatical. Third one is Telangana Rebellion. Nizam rule was autocrat and monarch. The rule itself had brought up many outcomes for revolution. This aggressive rebellion will be discussed in this session. Fourth one is communal violence. The whole Hyderabad state witnessed communal violence where there was a huge war between Hindus and Muslims. This made to call military operation by the Union government. That is why it is called Operation Polo. Fifth topic is social dimension. I will also cover this dimension, which is nothing but there were many vulnerable sections and also many classes which were oppressed under Nizam rule, and many enjoyed this Nizam rule. I will be also dealing with that. Next, Operation Polo will come into glance. Whole Operation Polo will be covered. At last, I will deliberate about post Hyderabad integration into Union of India. Background. Nizams were initially under Mughals. Nizam I Azaf Shah was appointed as Subadar for the Deccan Suba. Later, Hyderabad became the first Indian princely state to accede to British protection under subsidiary alliance. Last Nizam ruler was Mir Usman Ali Khan, whose rule lasted from 1911 to 1948, during which railways, roads, airports were introduced. He also donated to build several institutions such as Usmania University, etc. So, coming back to the topic, Hyderabad integration. So, how did Mir Usman Ali Khan's rule ended in 1948, making him the last Nizam of Hyderabad? As India achieved independence in 1947, according to Indian Independence Act, all princely states had only three options. Option 1 was to merge with India, option 2 was to merge with Pakistan, and option 3 was to remain independent province. Hyderabad refused to merge with dominant of India or the new country Pakistan and wanted to be an independent state or dominion under Commonwealth. Later, Prime Minister of Nizam had signed Standstill Committee with Dominion of India, containing all previous arrangements except for stationing of Indian troops into the state. Negotiations. There are two negotiations, political and diplomatic. In Hyderabad initially approached constitutional monarchy with Commonwealth of Nations, but it was rejected by Viceroy of India. At the time of British withdrawal from Indian rule, the Nizam announced that he did not intend to join, but they wanted to appoint trade representatives in Europe countries and began to negotiations with Portuguese, seeking to lease or buy Goa to provide his state with access to sea. As we discussed about standstill agreement, Indian government offered Hyderabad this agreement, which made assurance that the status quo would be maintained, no military actions would be taken for 1 year. According to this agreement, India would handle Hyderabad's foreign affairs, but Indian army troops stationed in Secunderabad would be removed. Later, this agreement was violated by Razakars. Hyderabad violated all clauses of agreement in external affairs by carrying out interviews with Pakistan, secretly loaned 15 million pounds, etc. In the summer of 1948, Indian officials, especially Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, signaled an intention to invade. British encouraged India to resolve the issue without the force, but refused the Nizam request to help. The Nizam also made unsuccessful attempts to seek the intervention of UN. People from Telangana had faced many oppressions such as feudalism, theocratic rule, etc. The outcome for this oppressive rule was nothing but revolution. The Communist League. Communism had reached climax. The advent of Second World War saw the beginning of communist influence on the Andhra Mahasabha, and in 1942, with the removal of ban on the Communist Party of India (CPI), the communists began to grow in Hyderabad. Further, after 1944, the communists, along with Andhra Mahasabha, began gaining ground in several districts, especially among the agricultural laborers, poor tenants, and also small landholders, and started forming Sanghams. They also targeted Zamindars and Deshmukh's Reddis. Main motto was to abolish state and also abolish private property. Next comes tribal movements. Tribal movements not only agrarian but also forest based. It was against zamindars, money lenders, and also petty government officials. Tribal used to take loans. Tribal used to take loans. When tribals are unable to pay the loans, money lenders and landlords usurp their land. Due to this, tribal not only became tenants on their own lands, but sometimes they even became bonded labor. Tribal groups such as Gonds, etc., revolted against them. Tribals did not receive any help from police, courts, and revenue officials. Against the feudalism, both Communist Party and tribals were against landlords and feudals. There was huge feudal oppression. 40% of land was either directly owned by Nizams or given by the Nizams to to elites in the form of jagirs, and 60% was under the government's land revenue system, which was relied on powerful landlords and gave no legal rights for security from eviction to the people actually cultivating the land. Beti chakri was also existed, which is nothing but consisted of work performed by lower caste at the will of landlord, and this also includes forced labor work. For example, so-called untouchable family was required to send one man every day to household labor and other jobs for the landlord. The large landlord had taken over significant tracts of land either through forced occupation or debt sales. Andhra Mahasabha was organized. They demanded for reduced land revenues rates and abolition of VAT and introduction of Telugu into local courts. Next, communal violence comes into glance. So most of the loyalists of Nizams were opposed to the Hyderabad integration into India, and among those were the MIM. It was formed in the 1927. They were loyal to Nizam and opposed the integration by 1946. MIM's charge was under a lawyer called Kazim Razvi. Razvi started a movement called Razakar movement, and it was paramilitary volunteer force and demanded for independent state. They were loyal toward Nizams. These included Arabs, Rohingyas, Northern Indian Muslims, and also Pathans. There was enough evidence in Indian history about violence and atrocities by the Razakars, and the state received so during 1947 to 1948, while Nizam and his loyalists were against the idea of Hyderabad integration, things were changing into the rest of India. Atrocities of Razakars. Frequent raids plundered them, troubled villages, arrested or killed suspected and potential agitators, terrorized the innocent and also abducted women. They also took women as part of the campaign forcefully. Razakars brutally raped and tortured many Hindu women. Razakars had begun holding demonstration around the same time. Communist uprising the Telangana Rebellion was brewing. A note to all Indian states, People Conference standing committee called the tug of war between Razakars and communists over Hyderabad. Social dimensions. First, we'll be discussing about social dimensions of status of women. Hindu women were worstly victims under this movement, where women were brutally raped by Razakars, and several villages jumped into open wells presented in agricultural field, and they also were appointed by huge physical work and also forced labor with only minimum wages. Social dimension of tribals. Tribals after the death of Kamaraya got aggressed and revolted against the state. The state grabbed the lands, but not only grabbed the lands, but also hurted many religious sentiment of the people. In other sense, tribal had deep relationship with forest, not only economic life, but the religious life of the tribals have been connected with the forest. Many flora and fauna have been their object of worship. Some Nizam legislation permitted contractors and merchants to cut down the forest. Those legislation includes land alienation, usurpation, forced labor, minimum wages, brutal forest tax, etc. Dalits. The nature of the concerted tenison has been politically indicated in the configuration of unceasing hegemony of native upper caste feudalists over the British Dalits. Majority of Dalits were engaged under Veti Chakri forced labor. The Dalits were treated as untouchables and they were brutally tortured by upper caste. Landless laborers. Landless laborers had also witnessed many obstacles where landless laborers were oppressed by landlords. Peasants were having limited land ownership. Peasants are also nothing but landless labor. They were suffered from high rent, illegal levies, arbitrary evictions, unpaid labor in zamindari areas. Government levied heavy land revenue on them. This obstacle led to joint communism and revolts against the feudal system. Hindus. Historians quoted that to prevent independent Muslim-led state taking root in the heart of predominantly Hindu India was another worry. Members of Razakars were terrori- terrorizing many Hindu villages. The backlash was said to have been in response to many years of intimidation and violence against Hindus. Men were shot dead and women were brutally raped. Feudals. Feudals enjoyed respectable position. These people collected huge revenue and grabbed people's land in the name of loans tax. Doras and Deshmukhs were predominantly seen under Nizam rule. These were Hindus and Muslims consisted of Zamindars and Jagirdars. These people are from Muslim background and in Hindu background we have Doras and Deshmukhs. They held all land in their fief and everybody used to give their produce and they used to be given barely enough food for subsistence. The feudal used to reside in the Gadis, a high fortress. According to Sri Krishna Committee on Telangana says there is still gross injustice to the lead to land tillers of the region. The villains, in this case, were landlords of the Telangana and not those of other regions. The next topic is Operation Polo. Operation Polo, the code name of the Hyderabad police action in September 1948 by the newly independent domain of India against the Hyderabad state. It was a military operation in which Indian army invaded Nizam rule princely state annexing it into Indian Union. It was formed on 13 September and it was ended on 18 September. It was a 5 day treaty. On 17th of September, the military operation was concluded. Military was successful on 18th September. Military was successful. On 18th of September, surrender